EF0. A homeowner steps outside after the sirens stop, finds a missing shingle, a bent gutter, a lawn chair sitting 3 houses down from where it started, and is already convinced they just survived a tornado. Officially, they're right. That's exactly what a tornado can look like at its weakest. That's EF0, officially labeled light damage, wind gusts estimated between 105 kilometers per hour and 137 kilometers per hour. It's the bottom rung of the Enhanced Fujita Scale, and it's also the most common rating a tornado ever receives. The damage rarely looks dramatic. Shingles peel off roofs, gutters bend or tear loose. Tree limbs snap, sometimes whole branches, but the trunk stays rooted. A carport or a loose fence panel can get shoved over or carried a short distance. Survey teams look for exactly these signs when they walk a path afterward, because at EF0, there usually isn't much else to go on. No collapsed walls, no torn-off roofs, nothing structural, just the small stuff that a strong straight-line wind could arguably do too. That overlap is part of what makes EF0 tricky to confirm. Investigators sometimes have to rule out a downburst or a gust front before they'll commit to calling it a tornado at all, since both can leave behind damage that looks almost identical from the ground. What usually settles it is the pattern: a narrow, continuous path of damage versus a broad area hit all at once. EF0 almost certainly happens more often than the official numbers show too. A weak, short-lived tornado crossing an empty field, touching down at night, or hidden inside a heavy rain core can come and go without leaving anything a survey team can find, or without anyone reporting it at all. Which means the weakest category on the scale is also the one we understand the least, simply because it's the easiest one for a tornado to hide inside. None of that makes EF0 harmless. Wind at the top of this range, close to 137 kilometers per hour, is still strong enough to snap a tree limb onto a car, knock a person off balance, or send an unsecured trampoline through a window. It's just that the damage stays contained to things that were already loose, already exposed, already vulnerable. The structure itself, in almost every case, survives, and that's exactly why EF0 warnings get ignored so often. People compare the funnel on their phone to the aftermath they've seen from a much stronger storm, and when the reality turns out to be a missing shingle and a bent fence post, the warning starts to feel like it cried wolf. The rating was correct. It just described the low end of a scale most people have never actually seen laid out. The wind only needs to climb a little further before that changes completely, and roofs stop losing shingles and start losing themselves entirely. EF1. Estimated winds climb to 138 kilometers per hour through 177 kilometers per hour. Officially rated moderate damage. Roofs can come off in sheets rather than just losing a few shingles. Mobile homes can be pushed off their foundation. A parked car can be shoved sideways hard enough to leave tire marks that don't match how it was parked. Most people genuinely can't tell an EF1 apart from what comes after it just by looking at the funnel on a screen. The shape doesn't announce the rating. Only the damage does, and survey teams are the ones who assign it afterward, not anyone watching in the moment. EF1 is also one of the most commonly assigned ratings in the historical record, which means the tornado most people picture when they imagine an ordinary tornado is far more likely to belong here than at the extreme end of the scale. Ordinary, in the statistical sense, but ordinary is doing a lot of quiet work in that sentence. An EF1 can still injure someone standing in the wrong doorway when it hits, still peel a garage clean off a house, still turn a driveway full of parked cars into scattered wreckage in under a minute. And because an EF1 can still leave plenty of structures standing, its damage path can look deceptively ordinary afterward. A roof missing here, a garage peeled open there, cars pushed into yards. The storm may be gone, but its path can look almost random until investigators reconstruct what actually happened. But once the wind crosses 178 kilometers per hour, the damage stops being about roofs and vehicles and starts moving into the structures themselves. What comes next doesn't just take things off a house, it starts taking the house. EF2. Estimated winds of 178 kilometers per hour to 217 kilometers per hour carry the rating considerable damage. Roofs can come off frame houses entirely instead of just losing a layer. Mobile homes can go from damaged to unrecognizable. Large trees can be uprooted whole, root system and all, like the ground simply lost its grip. Cars can leave the ground at this intensity. They don't just slide, they lift. Emergency guidance consistently recommends getting to an interior room with no windows once a tornado warning is issued. And at this intensity, the reasoning behind that advice stops being abstract. Even objects that seem too heavy to move become a hazard once winds reach this range. Propane tanks, sheds, above-ground pools, all of it can end up airborne, which is part of why survey teams treat EF2 as the point where debris itself becomes almost as dangerous as the wind carrying it. What's strange is how ordinary an EF2 can still look from a safe distance. Gray funnel, gray sky, no visible difference from something half as strong. The damage left behind is the only honest witness, and once that much material becomes airborne, the debris field itself becomes part of the danger. The tornado isn't just destroying structures anymore, it's turning pieces of those structures into projectiles. If the shape of the funnel can't tell you how dangerous it is, what can? At EF2, at least there's usually something left to rebuild. Cross into severe territory and houses stop losing pieces and start disappearing whole. EF3. Estimated wind speeds of 218 kilometers per hour through 266 kilometers per hour carry the official label severe damage. Entire stories of well-built houses are torn away. Trains have been derailed at this intensity. Heavy vehicles can be thrown considerable distances rather than simply pushed or rolled along the ground. The 2011 super outbreak produced 355 tornadoes across the southern and eastern United States over 4 days, fueled by an unusually favorable atmospheric setup that repeatedly generated powerful supercell thunderstorms across a huge region. It remains one of the most damaging tornado events on record. More than 200 of those tornadoes touched down on a single day, April 27th, a total that still stands as the highest number of confirmed tornadoes ever recorded in the United States within 24 hours. From a distance, the funnel gives you almost no reliable clue about what the ground is about to experience. An EF3 can look almost identical to an EF1 on video. Same gray rotation, same shape against the sky, completely different outcome once it touches down. There's an even stranger case tied to this exact rating. On May 31st, 2013, near El Reno, Oklahoma, a tornado grew to 4.2 kilometers wide, the widest ever recorded. But the tornado spent most of its life crossing open farmland instead of towns, and the Enhanced Fujita Scale can only rate what it finds evidence for. Mobile radar measured winds far above the EF3 range, including estimates in the EF5 equivalent range. But the official damage rating remained EF3. El Reno exposed the scale's blind spot. A tornado can contain extreme winds even when the ground below provides too little evidence to give it the highest rating. The next level shows what happens when a storm that strong reaches a town instead of a field. AF4. Estimated winds of 267 kilometers per hour to 322 kilometers per hour carry the official label devastating damage. Well-constructed houses can be completely destroyed, while weaker structures may be swept away entirely. Cars and other large objects are found significant distances from where they started, and at this intensity, entire wooded areas can be flattened in a single direction, an unmistakable signature investigators look for from the air before they even reach the ground. The 2011 Tuscaloosa-Birmingham tornado reached this intensity during parts of its track. It stayed on the ground for roughly 129 kilometers and killed 65 people. That's farther than some countries are wide. There's a specific problem survey teams run into at this level. EF4 and EF5 damage can look almost the same on the ground. A destroyed house is a destroyed house, and telling them apart often comes down to small technical details, whether a foundation bolt sheared or pulled clean out, whether debris was found wrapped around rebar or simply scattered nearby. The worst damage doesn't always announce its own rating. Sometimes it takes an engineer with a clipboard to separate catastrophic from something even worse. The 2014 tornado that struck Mayflower and Valonia, Arkansas, sits in this category too. It carried winds up to 306 kilometers per hour and stayed on the ground for 66 kilometers, killing 16 people in less than an hour. The damage survey there also showed why construction quality matters so much at this level. Two buildings exposed to the same tornado can suffer very different outcomes depending on how they were anchored and built. At EF4, that kind of guesswork is still possible. One level higher, there's often nothing left to guess at all. EF5. Wind speeds estimated above 322 kilometers per hour with no official upper limit, because nobody has ever measured where one might be. The category is officially labeled incredible damage, a description that sounds almost inadequate for what it represents. Well-built, properly anchored houses are lifted completely off their foundations and disintegrated. Steel-reinforced structures suffer severe, sometimes irreparable damage. Cars and other large objects can become airborne over distances longer than a football field. Measuring wind speed directly inside a tornado this strong is close to impossible. Conventional instruments placed in the path rarely survive contact, so the highest wind estimates tend to come from mobile Doppler radar units scanning from a safe distance instead. In 1999, near Bridge Creek in Moore, Oklahoma, a mobile Doppler radar measured winds that were later reanalyzed at up to 517 kilometers per hour, one of the highest wind speeds ever measured inside a tornado. That storm stayed on the ground for 85 minutes, killed 36 people, injured 583 more, and left a damage path 61 kilometers long. Damage indicators frequently run out of usefulness at this level for a simple reason. There's often nothing left standing to indicate anything. Survey teams have documented asphalt peeled off roads, steel-reinforced buildings reduced to twisted frames, and stretches where the only way to trace the tornado's path was by following where the vegetation itself had simply vanished. For 12 years, the scale went strangely quiet. After a tornado near Moore, Oklahoma reached EF5 strength on May 20th, 2013. No tornado in the United States earned that rating again for 4,414 consecutive days, the longest gap in the record since ratings began in 1950. Researchers argued over whether that meant tornado behavior had genuinely changed, or whether survey teams had simply grown more cautious about the damage required to justify the label. The silence finally broke on June 20th, 2025, when a tornado near Enderlin, North Dakota was later upgraded to EF5 after survey teams found extreme structural and ground damage, including overturned railcars and a farmstead swept completely from its foundation. It was the first EF5 confirmed in the United States since 2013. EF5 has no ceiling written into the scale, only the edge of what our instruments have managed to survive long enough to record. If the scale itself admits it doesn't know the top, how strong could a tornado actually get? Nobody has an answer yet. Not because the question was never asked, because it still hasn't been answered.